This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Welcome to this week's episode of Journeys, Chronicles of Our Asian Century. And we are revising our format for this episode because we have two very special guests, two former cabinet members, and one senator who was also a cabinet member, to discuss some of the most crucial issues for the coming months with regards to our Philippine foreign policy and some crisis situations. But as usual, we begin with news from Asia and analysis of these developments. First, let me read about the visit of the Japanese Foreign Minister, Fumio Kishida. China laid out firm conditions for improved ties with Japan, telling Tokyo's visiting foreign minister that there could be, quote, no ambiguity or vacillation, unquote, in meeting Beijing's demands over historical interpretations, relations with Taiwan, and other key matters. The visit by Fumio Kishida is seen as an act of outreach to China as the two sides try to repair relations bedeviled by disputes over territory, history, and competition for influence in East Asia. And we have former Senator Francisco Kitatad with us, and former cabinet member, press secretary during the time of President Marcos, and one of our few statesmen who joined Marcos in his visit to China in 1975, if I'm not mistaken, and in the opening of relations with China. And of course, we have the former Undersecretary of Education, Mr. Butch Valdez, who is head of the Philippine La Rue Society, an international organization, as well as head also or chair of the Save the Nation movement here in the Philippines. So let's look at this development with the Japanese foreign minister visiting China. What does this signify, Senator Kit, in your view?
Well, it means that the countries of Asia have realized the need to get together closer, because no other issue in the last so many years has caused so much trouble for everyone than the maritime disputes with China. Japan and China, they have a maritime conflict. Philippines and China, they have maritime conflict. Vietnam, Malaysia, and all the others, they have these maritime conflicts. And so it is but time for the great leaders of Asia to look at this more closely and give themselves a fresh start.
Okay, let's go turn to Undersecretary of Education, Butch Valdez. What's your take on this?
Well, this is actually very significant because in the light of present conditions, as you had premised in your introduction, that there are disputes among these countries, and these disputes actually, although they have been disputes before, and the same ones that have been discussed, have actually come to the forefront, most especially because of the influence of other superpowers. And it is not a secret that the United States had actually announced its geopolitical moves with regard to the Asia pivot, which means they have moved their naval strength, more than half of their naval strength in this part of the world, and have involved other countries in their exercises, including Japan and other countries like ours, in these military exercises. So in the light of this, it is significant that Japan extends its arm and extends its hand for peace, no? To shake the hands of China, who is another superpower, probably to appease them of any concerns they might have because of these developments.
Okay, Kit, you had something to add. I think you were raising your hand a little.
No, I was just agreeing with what Boots is saying. This is the Asian century, Mentor. So I think it behooves upon the leaders of Asia to make sure that this comes about.
Yeah. Well, this leads me to the second news item that we have, which is related to this visit of the Japanese foreign minister. And this is the visit of the Lao President Bunhang Vorachith to China, just ahead of a UN arbitration ruling on the South China Sea, which is expected very soon, and in fact maybe this May. And this is seen as a good opportunity to downplay any possible negative impact on China-ASEAN relations and help China earn the support of other ASEAN members. The two countries agreed that maintaining peace, stability, cooperation, and development of the South China Sea area is in line with the common interests of regional countries, calling on parties directly concerned to resolve disputes peacefully through negotiation. China and Laos pledged to further enhance bilateral cooperation and parliamentary exchanges. In the light of these two developments, it seems odd to me that the Philippines is ending its latest or its present administration on a note of negativity. We are not talking to China yet. Our government is not talking, is not engaged in dialogue with China. And this seems to be very odd when, in fact, even more significant countries in Asia, such as Japan, and in ASEAN, Laos is going to be the chair of ASEAN this year. They are engaged in visits to China and dialogue with China. Senator?
Well, it's most unusual, but I have personally always stood for a two-track approach to this problem. You know, we are a pluralistic society. We have sectors in our society who would like a purely international approach. We have other sectors that would like to have a bilateral approach. So, assuming that we have decided to go to the arbitration tribunal, that should not prevent us from talking to China. Because if we win the arbitration, we would be talking to China. If we lose the arbitration, we would be talking to China. So, I mean, it is, I think, a losing proposition to insist on a purely international approach, ignoring the need to talk. We have to talk.
Mr. Secretary, you have anything to add to this?
Well, I agree, of course, with what the good senator has been saying on this, because detente is the method of resolving disputes like this, and definitely not any other way. However, having said that, we have to, as a country, as a nation, define what is sovereign, and understand and define what our foreign policy is. I put those two together because if you are going to have an independent foreign policy, independent from that of our other superpowers like the United States, we have to define it. And up to now, we still don't have something like that. And once you have a foreign policy, it assumes, of course, that you consider yourself a sovereign nation state.
Okay, and this is why this third item is very, very relevant to these questions. This is from the past week, April 29 and the days after, from various local news sources. Former Solicitor General Attorney Estelito Mendoza appealed to the government to suspend the proceedings of the United Nations Arbitral Tribunal on the territorial dispute case against China. And Attorney Mendoza was arguing that the next administration to come after the elections should be given a free hand to deal with this issue and with China. Apparently, some are arguing that this case can be used as a leverage with China in any talks with China. Mm-hmm. However, others say that there is no such thing because China has already said it does not consider this case relevant to its interests and concerns. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Russia has also expressed agreement with China, as well as India, Brunei, Laos, and Cambodia, that such issues between sovereign states is better not internationalized and better negotiated bilaterally between concerned states. Right. We'll go on to discuss this after a break, but maybe we still have a minute or so for initial reactions from the Senator and from the Secretary. Senator.
Well, China's position on this issue is a canonical position. Mm-hmm. You cannot change it in my case. We have gone this far, so it is there. Now, we have an administration that is going out. I believe Attorney Mendoza's position is a very wise one. But I don't believe this administration is going to do anything to suspend the deliberations in the tribunal. But every administration must have a fresh start, and the incoming administration must be given all the chances to look at this issue as wisely as possible. Because as I said in the beginning, no issue has given us so much trouble this past so many years than the China-Philippine issue.
Yeah, and Secretary?
Well, yeah, I agree with Estelito Mendoza because I think it behooves on this present administration to have the courtesy to get the next administration to be at least to review the positions that the country had taken with regard to this very important issue. Although it is known that any kind of decision that may come from the Court of Arbitration may not be binding on the party, especially if one party is not party to the discussions in the Court of Arbitration. But nevertheless, that position that we have taken has to be reviewed by the next one because of the importance and proximity of this situation.
Okay, so we'll continue with this issue after this break.